All right. Hi, Priya. Good morning, everyone. My name is Courtney Hobson. I'm program manager in the Drescher Center for the Humanities. My job there is to do, I wear many different hats, but the one that most of you see is the event planning hat. I've worked at UMBC for, it'll be 7 years in a few weeks. So a lot of what I'm sharing today is trial and error of doing things. I was actually reminded this week because we had the eclipse on Monday that the very first event that I actually organized on campus was a solar eclipse watch party for the one we had in 2017. And I partnered with the library, and they were kind enough to get glasses, and they set up a pinwheel making station, and I just played Total Eclipse of the Heart on speaker over and over again. So that was my contribution to the event. Um, so as I said, my presentation is gonna kind of be very bare bones, just kind of like step by step. Um, and if you have questions in the interim, like while I'm talking, feel free to raise your hand. But I also have a time set up at the end for much more specific questions because some of you gave left questions for me um, in your registration. So. Do folks want to introduce themselves very quickly, just so I know who you are and like where, some of you I know, but just so I want to know like if you're faculty or staff or a student. And we'll do the thing where you just pick someone's name on the screen because everyone's Brady Bunch setup is different. I will start off with Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm the academic program specialist for the staff department of sociology, anthropology, and public health. So I'm a staff member here. Mercedes.
Lovely, thank you. Hi all, my name is Mercedes. Sorry my screen doesn't work. I have a desktop, but no webcam connected right now. I just joined UMBC about 2 months ago, the tail end of January. I'm the gallery operations specialist for CADVC. If you need a little bit of art in your life, come visit the gallery right here on campus in the Fine Arts Building. And next I'll go with Vanessa.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Capuano, she, her pronouns. I am the academic program specialist in the philosophy department. And next I will go with Jolie.
Hey y'all, I'm Julie Sayo. I'm an assistant professor in visual arts where I teach graphic design. I'm one of 3 new junior faculty, and somehow it always ends up on us to plan events. So that's why I'm here. I'll go with Carrie.
Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Evans. I'm an assistant professor in social work, and I'm taking over our student organization next year. So I anticipate that I will be planning events, but I have not thus far. So I'm here to learn, and I apologize I came in late, so I'm not sure who hasn't gone yet. Somebody wants to volunteer. Shannon, I'll call on you. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Shannon Sorrow, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Education. And I'm going to call on someone I think I recognize, Maria.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maria Mani. I'm the Spanish area coordinator. Sammy?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Maria. Good to see you. I'm Samantha Sullivan. I am an admissions counselor in the Department of Undergraduate Admissions and Orientation. Let's do Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Pfeiffer. I'm the chair of philosophy. Done a lot of event planning with Vanessa's help, but still have so much more to learn. So I'm looking forward to that. Oh, I'm supposed to call on somebody. I have no idea who has been called on. I can't keep track of anything.
Let's go with Priya.
Okay. Morning, everybody. I'm Priya, use she, her pronouns. I'm the new, as of, I think it's my 3rd week, project manager for the Global Asia's Initiative. And so I'll be
Didn't know
doing
that.
a lot of events. Wait, who said that? I don't know how WebEx works. Oh, you didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, I work here now.
Next is either BJ or Ting, whoever wants to go.
Go. Okay, I am BJ. I work for the Choice Program with UMBC. And so I have organized some things with my section in the region. So I'm the AD for the Metro region, which is Montgomery County, PG, and Central. And so I'm taking this so that way I can organize some more things, hopefully, when we get some more staffing in my area.
And then last up is Ting.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ting Huang. I am the interim program coordinator at the McNair Scholars Program in our Academic Opportunities Program office. And one of the things that my program offers UMBC is our September conference. So here I am, event planning.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. And one thing that I noticed, I don't know if anyone else noticed, is how very gendered our group is right now. So I don't know what that says about how things go on campus, but just a comment that I thought I would share with the group. All right, so let's get started. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very simple. Event planning 101. That's what it says on the tin. That's what you're getting today. All right. So when you're starting an event or you have an idea for an event, these are, the things you need to consider: the who, what, when, why, and how. So the first thing that, at least I'm going to use our humanities forum as a point of reference for a lot of what we're doing. And for those of you who don't know about our humanities forum, it's been going on since 1987. So actually much longer than the center has even existed. And the goal of the forum was to showcase faculty work to the campus, because the concern was that a lot of focus was going towards the sciences and not enough to arts and humanities, a story that continues to this day. And so they decided they wanted to showcase their work to the public. So that's kind of the nature in which the forum exists. And it's a free public lecture series. So we try to encourage folks from off campus to come as well. So with that point in mind, when you're thinking of an event, you need to consider who your potential audience members are. Are they students? Is this strictly faculty and staff? Are they from a specific demographic? Like, is this a topic about disability? Is it a topic about LGBTQ plus matters? You just need to think about who your specific audience is when you're planning an event. The picture on the left, that is Naomi Andre. She is a professor in music at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She's specifically a musicologist, and she focuses on the history of Blackness and opera. And so when it came to her event, I knew I wanted it to be a concert/lecture series. And so I reached out to local opera organizations in the area. So Baltimore doesn't have like a formal opera like they do in DC, but there are like nonprofit opera organizations. There's two, and there's like a Baltimore opera, and then there's one called Maryland Opera, which is also based in Baltimore. And then I also reached out to a group in Annapolis, just to put this event on their radar. And two of them reached out and said, this is great. This is exactly the kind of thing that our organization likes to promote. So thank you for sharing it with us. Now, do I know if they came? Absolutely not. But they are at least aware that we have put on an event like this and that I reached out to them. So to me, that is part of the goal. But again, considering your potential audience members is a big part of planning an event. Another thing is identifying event objectives and outcomes. So on the right, this is Devarian Baldwin. He's going to be speaking May 1st. And he is a scholar of American Studies at Trinity College. And his talk is going to be about how universities impact their urban environments around them. And so as a result of that, I decided, if he's going to be talking about university impact on cities, UMBC is not in a city. We're kind of in our own little bubble in Catonsville. And so I felt it'd be more appropriate to have the event in the city. And so we're partnering with University of Baltimore to host the event there. And so it'll be a joint event, and we're providing shuttle buses for folks who want to attend and go to the event. And we're also going to be streaming it. And we plan to invite members of the community, especially as Devarian will be speaking specifically about 2 Baltimore neighborhoods in particular. One in West Baltimore, actually in my neighborhood, near where the University of Maryland Biopark is. And then in East Baltimore, in the Eager Park neighborhood, where Hopkins has their it's not called a biopark. I don't remember what it's called. I think it's called like their science and tech park, but it's the same kind of idea. So that was part of the objective is, one, I want to do more things in the city, reaching out to the city, involving the city. So Devarian Baldwin was a good opportunity to do so. And outcomes is to bring folks in the university into contact with folks in the community. A lot of times we expect people from the community to come to us. That's not always possible or ideal. You want to meet people where they are. And so the best way to do that is to take UMBC into the city and have conversation with folks there. Do people have any questions about what I just said with this particular slide? No? Okay. Kylie, thanks for joining
Actually,
us.
I
Go
do
ahead.
have one.
Go ahead,
You'll
Priya.
you'll probably talk about this, but is it a lot more difficult to kind of coordinate stuff off campus than on campus? And how easy is it to like get permission for that kind of thing?
There's really no getting permission. Like you can do whatever you want. Well, not whatever you want, but there's nothing preventing you from organizing an event off campus. Ease, I think, depends on who your off-campus partners are and how well you work with them. I have the benefit of being friends with my off-campus partner prior to this. So we work together, like we've worked together professionally in the past, but we're also just friends. So I think leveraging your partnerships is a good way of doing that. But let's say you don't have such partnerships. I think just trying to plan things as thoroughly and as early as possible is the best way. Obviously, when it comes to things like perhaps uh, the one thing that I'm nervous about is catering. I have to organize catering for a place I've never been to before. But in this instance, I reached out to UBalt and said, who's a caterer that you all have used in the past? And they said, this is who we've used. Just tell them this information because they've been here before and they know how to set things up. So I think just really leveraging your partnerships and who you're going to work together with is a big part of that. But yes, there are obviously some challenges. This is a big gamble for me. I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of folks from UBalt there. I don't know how many UMBC folks are going to come. I hope that with the shuttle, that'll at least ease some stress, particularly for students. But I don't know if any faculty or anyone else are going to come. So it's a risk that I'm taking that may not pay off, but it's something that I believed in that should happen off campus. And my director, Jessica, supported this idea, and we're going to go with it. And Pepper agrees.
Another question.
Yes.
When you're reaching out to community partners, are you sending just like a email with information? Because I know like my UMBC events,
Mhm.
you have to log in, right, essentially. So do you use something like Eventbrite or anything like that to share information?
I'm actually going to cover that in just a bit, but yes, normally it's through email communication is the best way. But I'm going to explain. But yes, your problem of my UMBC events is something that yes is definitely a problem. Eventbrite is one way. I've actually never thought of that, but I have a different way around that. But we'll talk about that in a second. Any other questions about this? Oh, okay. Pepper has decided that she's just going to park right here, so we'll do that. Okay. Another factor in planning, pre-planning, is identifying dates and times. This is the biggest hurdle that I have observed people having is figuring out when to have this. And because there's 50 million things happening on campus all the time, especially this month. There are certain months of the year that I have observed are the busiest. In the fall, it's October, and in the spring, it's April. Those are the busiest months for events on campus. I think personally, I think it's because that's like the first full month that we have where there isn't a break, slash, it's not too close to the beginning of the semester and it's not too close to the end of the semester. So that's kind of why I think that's where everything happens all at one time. But there are several places for you to check. One is the My UMBC events page. If you log into My UMBC, there's an events tab at the top. You can click on it and you can see if there are any events upcoming, particularly on your date, to do that. There's also an arts and culture calendar, which I will actually put the link for in the chat, because I don't know how many people know that that exists. Okay, yep, tail in my face. Thank you. Thanks again, Pepper. Okay, so yeah, if you go to artsandculture.umbc.edu, that is a website that is run by Tom Moore, who is the Director of Arts and Culture in the Office of Institutional Advancement. That is where he advertises all of the arts and humanities and social science events on campus. Oftentimes, I will come across events that are being hosted by departments, um, and I will email Tom Moore and say, hey, can you please feature this on your calendar? I've reached out to him to find out a way to kind of streamline this and make it easier for people to submit events to him because he doesn't know. The dress year, we have a format where when we're planning our forum and once everything is finalized, I just send him a list and say, these are the events, this is the information that you need. So we already have that baked into our system of how we plan things, but not a lot of people know about this calendar. And this calendar goes out to many people from off campus because anyone can subscribe to this calendar. So this is currently a calendar that you can use to kind of see if there are events happening. I'm working with Tom Moore to see if there is a way to kind of streamline the system and make it so that people can submit things. I gave him my suggestions. He said, thank you for your suggestions. I'll look into them and I haven't heard back, so we'll see what happens because it requires some work on his end. But hopefully this will be improved in the future. Another thing is that there are shared Google calendars that exist for COS events and arts, humanities, and social science planning. And I'm going to get out of this screen for right now and show you these calendars that are very helpful. No, don't take me to, I don't want to log into Duo again. Okay, I'm going to remove the 50 million calendars that I have and follow for a second. Okay. I'm gonna bump up the Zoom real quick. Okay. Can everyone see the calendars okay? Okay, so there exists a calendar where all of the events planned by folks in COS uh, are available. There's one that's an event planning, so you can go as far into the future as possible to see if there are any events. Um, no one has anything down for the fall yet, I don't think. No, no one has anything that far in advance. But you can put something down that far in advance. But yes, everything exists here. So you see, I have my humanities forum event listed twice. So the CAS events calendar actually, the dean's office website actually has an events calendar. So that the CAS events this calendar feeds into that. So that way, if someone is on the dean's office website for whatever reason and wants to know what events are coming in the college, it appears there. And then the blue is the actual social. It's the event planning calendar. So this isn't a public calendar. This is more so a calendar just so you can know what's going on. And sometimes what I do is, let's say if there's an event that we haven't settled on a date yet, but we have several dates in mind, I will go ahead and just I'll type out the event and put hold, just so people kind of know that, hey, I'm thinking of doing something on this date. And I've actually had people call me to say, hey, are you still planning on something? Because we're thinking of doing something on that date. Because I've forgotten to remove the hold on it, for example. So sometimes that works. So every admin in the department should have access to this, but sometimes they don't. So sometimes I've taken the liberty of going and adding people who I think should have access to the calendar. So if any of you want access to this calendar, please email me. And I will add you to said calendar because I find it to be an extremely helpful tool, and not enough people use it because I think it'll save a lot of us some headaches in the long run. Any questions about identifying dates and times? How many of you knew that that calendar existed?
I have is that the closest thing to like a master calendar per se?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, it is. Yeah, that's the closest thing to a master calendar that not everyone knows about. So that's very useful if no one knows about the master calendar. Um, so Lee, you knew about it, but most other people here did not. Okay. Again, the My UBC events page is good, but the share Google calendars are like my bread and butter. Like that's what I would go to first and foremost.
Can I ask a question, Courtney? I'm really sorry I missed the beginning. I thought this was in person, so I went up to Bob. It was hilarious actually because somebody else thought so, but they were actually looking for another meeting, which they took me to. Anyway, it was hilarious. But I'm here now.
Yeah.
We're planning a conference that is national, and so I'm wondering if this is if I'm in the right place. Like, is this going to be cover just like any conference, national, local, whatever, or what can you tell me if I'm
Your question, yours is kind of more so, this is more so for like smaller events. Your question, that's a you and me having a conversation.
I see. Okay.
I can help you.
Okay. I will take you up on that because I've never done this before. It's a NSF funded workshop, and I just don't do workshops. I go, but I don't put them on. Anyway, so I will catch up with you on that. But I
Some of
appreciate
these
that
things are relevant, like how to book things in 25 Live and things like that. But because you're doing like a much larger conference, there's a lot more pieces involved that I'm not necessarily going to cover in this because that's more of a very specific situation. And I want this to be a bit more general. So yeah, feel free to email me with what's happening, and I can assist you.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad that this issue is getting attention anyway, so this will be great.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Lee. Okay. Next one is identifying formats. Most of you are going to do in-person events, which completely fine. When we came back from quarantine, there was obviously a big juggle of, are we going to do virtual? Are we going to do in person? Are we going to do hybrid? I learned very quickly that people were using the word hybrid for an event that they meant virtual. And I have the definitions here just to kind of explain like the difference if people aren't aware. Um, again, virtual, everyone is participating in the event entirely online. Hybrid, you're actually making the experience equal for both audiences. So it's not as simple as, you're going to offer Q&A for the people in the room and you just have a camera pointed at the person talking for people at home and don't engage with them in any format whatsoever. Hybrid is everyone is having the same experience. So one example of which is, let's say you have a talk and there are people watching online. Hybrid does require a bit of extra work. Hopefully you have another set of eyes helping. In most cases, no. In most cases, I'm also this person. So the Q&A is being run by someone else. And then I'm on a computer monitoring the chat to see who has questions. And what I do is I read out the question to the person asking, and then I ask them to repeat the question on the microphone so that way the people who are watching at home can also hear the question, and then that way their question can be answered. So doing something as simple as that can engage the people at home as well. Otherwise, again, you're just sitting a camera down and pointing it at someone. You might as well just be recording at that point in time, as opposed to having something truly hybrid where people are in real time watching you.
Hey, Courtney, I have a quick question about, I guess, hybrid and virtual
Yes.
events. Does UMBC have any, I don't know if this falls under like accessibility, but are there like an outline or a checklist of expectations for when we're planning these types of events so that there can be some sort of equity in that regard? Or it's on us as planners?
I seem to recall there being something I need to look for. Another part of the problem is that UMBC has information scattered in many different places.
Truly.
I'm trying my best to kind of collate everything and grab it. I think there isn't something in terms of like best practices. It's more so like this is who you talk to if you want to do this, but it doesn't give you like any specific information about like best practices. I find that I've been working on issues of accessibility for a while with our events, pre-COVID actually. And COVID kind of, my hope was that it would make a change on campus. I have not seen it happen, unfortunately. I hope that it'll change because right now, fingers crossed it gets passed. There is a critical disability studies minor that is in the works that is being that will hopefully be live in the fall. And so hopefully that'll help to change the culture on campus around accessibility. But right now, the issues of accessibility are much more focused on students and making sure that they have access to the classroom. And so they're being ADA compliant with that. And so that's why it's called the Office of Student Disability and Student Disability Services. There isn't really anything for like event planning. So a lot of this has been very much trial and error, or me reaching out to folks in SDS for assistance, and they're more than happy to help because they're like, oh, great, this will be good for our students. But I wish that there were, best practices. There are plenty of universities that actually have like full-on websites about like best practices for events and things like that. I would like to eventually have something like that. It takes a lot of work, and I'm just one person for right now. So no, the answer to your question is no, there is not a place that exists, but I will create something and share it with you all, and hopefully, that will be the start of something.
Cool. Thanks, Courtney. I really appreciate you making those connections too, and going into a little bit of like the background there. And you have my support. We'll absolutely keep that in mind in planning our events. Thank you.
Yes. And I do recognize that being hybrid, like the way I described, is extremely difficult. Sometimes you're just one person, so you don't have the time to do that. And only thing that we can do is the best that we can with the tools that we have. So, but I think making the effort or being conscious of it, I think is half the battle. Yes, Maria.
Yeah, I just want to share a reflection that I had recently because I attended an event organized by the accessibility office, and they showed a documentary, Unseen, that focus on people with blindness and the difficulties that is they moving up with your career with that kind of challenge. So the way they put together the presentation, of course, was in itself an example of how you can try to do it, and the technology that a university has or it's trying to implement. It's humbling because it's not that everything runs smoothly or that everybody can put together something like that in a blink, but it was trying, and I think ethically we need to try the best we can, and to not shy away from doing events just because you don't get to the perfect or ideal accessibility standards, but starting and being honest about what you can do, like the classic having an interpreter, ASL interpretation in the room. I organized something related to theater, and the play had subtitles. And we had a person that was having hard of hearing challenges, and the emotional response to finally finding a play that cared about putting those subtitles moved everybody. Like we didn't think how it will create such an impact, and when you see it, I mean, it's such a worthy effort. And so I just wanted to say, don't stay away from doing events that will stay halfway through accessibility, but at least it's something, right? Try the best you can.
Yeah, I will say that because Office of Student Disability Services also exists under Office of Accessibility, and I can't remember get the whole title. So they are there to provide support and help, but they're obviously limited in what they can do. So that's why, again, leveraging those partnerships. I sat down with one of them and just kind of talked about like the things that I was noticing and things in which we can help. And every year in the forum, we try to feature at least one talk that focuses on disability studies. And we always partner with them, and they always provide us live caption or an interpreter for free because of that. That's not something that they can provide for everyone, obviously, but because we're focusing on disability and we're featuring them as a co-sponsor, they're more than willing to help. But I'm actually going to touch on accessibility a little bit later. But the point that you brought up, Maria, is exactly right. Making something accessible opens things up for everyone, because you never know, how this might impact someone else. Like, also everyone can be temporarily disabled at any point in time. So, it's making things accessible is good for everyone, not just for people with a disability. Any other questions about format? Okay. Identifying location. This has been a big problem, especially coming back from quarantine. On campus, we have finite space on campus. That only way I can say about that is to try to get a space as soon as possible, even if you're still in the planning stages for an event and you think it might happen on this date or whatever. Just book it. Just put in a request. Just do it. The worst that you can do is cancel it and just say we're not going to have that event there anymore or on that date. So with everything that I'm saying, plan it as put in the request for things as soon as possible, is the best way around it. But unfortunately, again, space is at a premium. But simple things like identifying the capacity of your space. So for example, many of you have been in the Drescher Center conference room. Our stated capacity that's on the wall is around 43 people. That is true if everyone is standing, but if everyone is actually seated around our table, let's say we just want people seated at the tables, it's around 18 people. And then everyone else has to sit around alongside the wall. So that's not a quite accurate statement of saying 43 people. Now our capacity in 25 Live is more accurate to reflect. They say 20 people, which is good. We can technically, again, you can always squeeze in more people if need be, but just be mindful of things like that because sometimes capacities are standing room or seated. Some rooms, especially big spaces like the theaters or the ballroom, sometimes they have different layouts, and your capacity then changes based on the layout. So, for example, in the Proscenium Theater, if they don't open up the top balcony, I believe the capacity, I'm not entirely sure, the capacity is just for the lower level versus the upper level. Fine Arts Recital Hall, it can fit a total of over 250 people in there. But if you just have the bottom open, it's around 150. So just be mindful of capacity. Accessible parking, if possible, make sure that it's close to accessible parking. Again, you're kind of at the whims of parking services, so some of these things are things outside of your control, but just, again, be mindful of it. AV capabilities. Not every room is built equally when it comes to AV capabilities. Again, some of you have been in the Drescher conference room, and you know that we have that fancy WebEx room kit, and we're actually going to be upgraded soon. But we're going to be one of 5 places on campus that has that. And they don't advertise where those 5 places are, except for people know about us. So not every room has the same sort of capabilities. So be mindful of what your needs might be, and what the room has. Obviously, if you're in a newer building, the AV capabilities are much better than, let's say, in Sondheim or Sherman. And also you want to make sure that you have clearly marked signage. I used to, prior to being at UMBC, I worked for Maryland Humanities, which is a state humanities council, nonprofit, and I ran Maryland History Day, which is a state version of National History Day. Big, imagine a science fair, but for history projects. And we would have, but we hosted it on UMBC's campus. And so we had 700 students coming to campus with their parents. No one knows where they're going. So it was my job the day before, we would come to campus and just paste signs everywhere so that people know where they're going. So let's say like Lee was doing like a big event, make sure that you have signs so people know where they're going. And make sure that you keep track of, like, sometimes there could be more than one entrance to a building, and so you want to put signs on every single entrance. And again, with these signs, I'm talking about signs that you're printing out. I'm going to get into a different type of sign in just a little bit. Does anyone have questions about identifying the location? One thing that I will say is that people probably aren't aware of this because they drive by it a lot. We have that tech park, which is like adjacent to our campus, the BW Tech Park. You can technically rent rooms in that space as well. There is a cost, but they have like conference rooms and meeting rooms and stuff. So I learned about that recently. I've not used it because it looks very conferencey, and very droll. I don't like the way that they look, but they are available. So I saw, I think Carrie, was that you or Kelly? And then I saw a hand from some, and then many hands. Okay. I think Carrie had a question in the chat. Sorry, I can't see chat from.
No worries, I can ask out loud.
Yeah.
I was just curious, just since you mentioned the cost with that site, kind of, what about rooms on campus itself? Like if I'm not using my department conference room, obviously that's free, but if I'm using another space on campus, do we have to pay for that? How does that look?
So yes and no. There are layers to it. So let's say if you're using a room in the Commons, that is run by Events and Conference Services. The cost of the room itself is free, but you might have to pay. There might be like a technology fee, or depending on how involved your event is, if like you need setup from someone else, you have to pay for that setup. But the actual cost of the room, like let's say if you just show up in the room, sit down for 2 hours, you don't need anything, you're just in the room, that's free. But once you start involving like things like tech or setup, that's where a fee comes into play. Even for a gesture, like if we wanted to use an event in the POB, which has its own operations team separate from events and conference services, we don't pay for the use of the space, but we have to pay for all of the lighting, things like that. So keep that in mind when it comes to your room. But let's say, for example, if you're using the Dresser Center, it's a very common, popular room for people to use. There's no costs associated with that because I manage it, and as long as you just leave the room the way that you found it and don't destroy things, it's because it's basically treated the same as a classroom. So if you're kind of using like a traditional classroom space, there really isn't a cost. But if you're using a more formal space that does involve some setup, then there are fees involved with that. And you can work with events and conference services. Usually if you request an event, they'll have someone working with you and they can discuss what the costs are. Okay. There I saw multiple hands. Hold on, let me go into a bigger view. I know I saw a hand from Shannon, and then there was a hand from someone else. Samantha.
I think my question was answered, so I took my hand down.
Okay. Shannon?
That was Shannon, sorry.
Samantha, sorry. Samantha, you had a question.
Yeah, it's not a question. I just wanted to make a comment about using the BW Tech Parks. So my office, we actually hosted our office retreat there, part of the day there. It is a pretty big space. We basically just needed the space for doing some team building exercises there. We had a massive table. It was pretty easy to do catering, pretty convenient for everyone. And there was a huge screen that we were able to like project onto. So we did like half of our retreat day there, just doing team building, professional development exercises. And then we went somewhere else to do something a little bit more fun. So you can use it in that like kind of hybrid way as well, of being like half the day there and half the day doing something somewhere else if you have a big event. But it was a great space, pretty convenient for everyone, lots of parking, no issues. So while it's a little outdated, it's still pretty useful for larger groups or convenience factors. That's all.
Yep. And they have a new person, I think, in charge of BW Tech because he's like specifically made an effort to like reach out to folks on campus, just be like, hey, we're here, please use our space. I'll try to find that information and I'll put it in the information that I send out to you afterwards, so you guys can just have that as an option if you're ever considering it. Okay. Like I said before, scheduling your event. The sooner you submit your event and all the additional requests, the better. At least 2 weeks in advance is what they say in their office. I would do earlier, but at least 2 weeks in advance is kind of like their cutoff in terms of when they review things. Because sometimes I'll put a request in months ago, but I don't hear from them for several until we get to the 2 weeks in advance part of it. So again, a lot of these things sometimes you are at the whims of other offices and departments and when their schedules can go on, which is why Gesture Center tends to have a lot of events in our own conference room, because I can control that space and I know what's going on. Okay, 25 Live. How many of you are familiar with 25 Live? Or have ever seen it before, heard of it before, kind of, sort of? All right, so 25 Live is the system in which you submit a request for an in-person event. They all require 25 Live confirmation. Once submitted, events and conference services will review and follow up. Even for, there are some spaces on campus that are like department controlled spaces. So for example, the Gesture Center conference room, let's say if you're, you know, let's say if the choice program wants to have something in our conference room, you will put in a request for the event and the calendar will show that it's completely blank. Someone from events and conference services will then reach out to me to ask if it is okay to use the event. Most of the time it is. Sometimes I will deny it because there's something going on and I haven't had an opportunity to put it in 25 Live yet. So there are some events like that, but your first line of defense is to always go through 25 Live. I've made it a habit even now for our personal Gesture events, like even for like our staff meetings and things like that. I put them in 25 Live just so it saves people the headache of like looking and saying, oh, can I have an event? Sorry, no, we have our staff meeting there every week. So that way it just kind of cuts off that process. You don't have to go that into it where you put like your annual meetings, but our space is something that's requested quite frequently. So I do that just for the sake of saving everyone a bit of time. I will have the link for 25 Live later, but you do need to request permission in advance to use the site. And you can request that by emailing schedule@umbc.edu. And you can search via you have different ways of searching, like what date you want your event to take place, and it can show you things that are available, or you might have an idea of where, but you don't know what time or when. And it'll ask you questions like, do you have a caterer? Will you need parking? Will you be serving alcohol? You can serve alcohol at events. There's like extra step in the process, but it kind of asks you all these questions that'll then be followed up upon by someone in events and conference services. Shannon.
So I want to just be explicit about the process. If I were trying to host a conference on campus, I assume I would go through events and services with kind of a proposal and talk about the space and whatever. But would I then need to secure permission to do this through 25 Live? Or is that something that would be included when I'm negotiating with events and services? I'm a little unclear on this.
So you want to submit through 25. 25 Live is run by events and conference services. So you will submit it, and then events and conference services will follow up with you because they'll look at it and see that it's a much more involved thing and that there's steps in the process. So you submitting it in 25 Live is you reaching out to events and conference services.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about 25 Live? Okay. Additional things, catering. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to get, there we go. Okay. Chartwell's is our on-site campus caterer. However, they do charge you to deliver to buildings that are not the commons, if anyone didn't know that. They do charge for delivery too. It's like $15, but it is something that they do. They charge to deliver to buildings that are on campus that are not the commons, just as a FYI, if people weren't aware. Other improved caterers include Glenmore, Absolutely Perfect, Rouge Catering, Classic Catering People, and the main ingredient. Drescher likes to use Absolutely Perfect. We have not used Chartwell's in a while for things, for reasons that should be obvious to most people who have eaten Chartwell's. Approved caterers can be paid via P card or your purchasing card. What it means to be an approved caterer means that you have submitted a contract with the university, you've bid on the process, and you have won that contract bid process. You can acquire food from other places, but it has to be paid for by other means. So for example, we have events a lot where I will order food from Atwater's or from Mirror Kitchen or from any other place just because I want, variety is the spice of life. However, we have to arrange so that either I pay for it or someone else in the office pays for it and then gets reimbursed later. The reason, and even let's say Mirror Kitchen or Atwater's, they have catering available. The reason why you can't pay for it with the P card is because in order to go through the bidding process, there's like certain level of like liability insurance and things like that they have to provide. Because you're going through someone who hasn't done that, the university doesn't want to use state funds in that same way. So there's like legalities behind that, but it's perfectly fine for you to pay for it and then get reimbursed. Now, obviously, if you're ordering something very large, that is not something that you can necessarily juggle. Then you're kind of limited to what you have. But just as an FYI, you can purchase food from other places, but you have to pay for it either yourself or let's say you have a department or, well, in your case, Priya, you guys actually have a Mellon grant. So I don't know how that works with the grants, whether or not you still have to follow those rules. I can talk to you about that later. But let's say if you have a department that has a foundation account, sometimes we've used the foundation account to pay for things. One, it's a lot faster, and two, there aren't as many rules involved with it. So that is what we're stuck with catering. You just kind of have to maneuver around it the best you can. Signage and student workforce. The picture below. How many of you have seen those signs on campus? The ones that say theater performance pub. It's kind of, they're put up in like, when you come into campus, they're like along that road or they're in front of buildings. If you're having a big public event, you can request these. You can request them through facilities management. The other screenshot I have on the screen is through facilities management has a work order website. You can literally put things in there like plumbing issues, housekeeping issues, lighting, power. This is good for any other thing, but they also do event setup requests. So let's say you're having an event and you need extra tables and chairs set up. That is something that is done through student workforce. You have to put in a request, an event setup request indicating how many chairs, how many tables, if possible, if you can give them like a layout of how you want them set up, that is possible. But all that is done through facilities. Student workforce is a specific, it is exactly as it sounds. It is students coming in and setting up those things for you. You can also request through here additional trash cans, recycling, or compost. We've had big conferences where the trash cans that we had were not going to be sufficient, so we've requested specific ones. You can also request additional housekeeping, and again, you can request signs such as this. And these are helpful, especially if you have people coming from off campus who might not know where they're going. These aren't necessarily the best because people can drive by them very easily and not notice them. But it's better to have them than to not have them. So again, I'll provide that link in the follow-up. Recording or live streaming. New Media Studio is our on-campus media team. They record everything, whether it's, commencement, certain games, but they can record your lectures and things like that as well. They also can provide live streaming. That's a more expensive setup, and live streaming is not possible in every single space on campus because certain rooms have better technology than others. So live streaming is kind of touch and go. If you're in a big venue space, like say a recital hall or one of the concert halls, it's more likely that live streaming will be available. You can't actually you can do it in the library gallery. We've done that before, but anywhere else is pretty much a no-go. However, they can record your event, and once they record it, it'll be uploaded onto the UMBC's YouTube channel. So all of our Humanities Forum events, unless explicitly requested by the speaker, we record all of them and make them available in the days after, just as a resource for people. Again, this is not necessary, but if this is something that you want to do, they are a resource that's available. Closed captioning and other accessibility services. Michael Cannelly, who is the Assistant Director and Coordinator of Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services, he is someone you can reach out to have CART services. And what CART services is, obviously for like our web services here, you have automated captioning. What a CART service provider will do is that it will be a live person sitting in, listening and typing as a person's talking, and that can be available, and it can oftentimes be more accurate. However, there is some prep that's needed in advance. Like if possible, if you can get all of the materials that would be presented and give them to the person. Like if someone has a pre-prepared talk, if you give that to that person ahead of time, so that way if there are words that are in a different language or jargon that may not be easy to understand, that way they can kind of have that to type it out ahead of time. But that's something that you can request through them, as well as interpreter services. Any questions about this? No? Okay. Okay, marketing plan. Things to think of. What info are you sharing? To whom? Where will you share it? And what format? Those are things to keep in mind when marketing something. Flyers. Flyers are things that I think about quite often because I design almost all of our flyers these days after many years of trial and error. So if you ever see a Dress Your Center flyer, usually I'm the one who makes it. Flyers are the bane of my existence on campus because I see people make so many mistakes, and I'm just like, ugh, I just want to fix it for you. Sometimes I've actually requested, can I make your flyer for you instead? Because I think I can make this better. The number one problem, too wordy. People put too many words. Faculty, I love you dearly, but you all use too many words on your, I can always tell when a flyer is made by a faculty person. I'm like, there are too many words on that page. People have very short attention spans. You need to get their attention very quickly. Not too many words. Okay. Color psychology is a thing. What color you use for your things can convey specific messages. Red is generally a color that you want to avoid unless for a very, very good reason you want to use the color red, okay? Not making the entire thing red. That can just be kind of angry and scary and garish. But I have a link in our thing about color psychology if you're interested in color psychology, because it's a real thing. It's very useful in trying to convey a message. It's also useful in terms of like one flyer that I saw go up recently, someone had a light background and they had light text on the light background. And I'm like, no, don't put white text on the light background. No one can read it. So it's things as simple as like, what color should your background be versus what color your text should be versus how heavy. It's a whole thing. I can go on for days about flyers. I love making flyers. They also frustrate me endlessly. These are available resources for you to use. Common Vision is a student-run design service on campus. They can make flyers for you. I find that sometimes they require a bit more of a heavy touch sometimes to kind of convey what you want what you want it to look like. However, if you just want a very simple thing, they can do that. There is a fee associated with it. I don't remember the cost off the top of my head, but they can do that. What I use a lot is Canva. You can get a free Canva account. I have a paid Canva account because I want to use all of the bells and whistles for everything that I do. But Canva is a very nice service. It's kind of like a drop and click of flyer design. I find it to be very handy and useful tool. I have so many things in Canva. Adobe Express is another thing. Everyone on campus has access to an Adobe Creative Suite. And Adobe Express, you can have that. Adobe Express is kind of like Canva. It's the same thing. It's not as flexible in terms of the sizes and formats you can make, but it's essentially the same thing. Sometimes I switch between the two, which one I like, but I primarily use Canva. Where to post them? Obviously, posting them in your immediate area, your space is possible. However, there are many other places you can post flyers on campus. In the commons, you actually have to have permission to post things in the commons, but you can post things there. Are you having issues with audio, Priya? Is anyone else having audio issues with me? Oh, Vanessa, you're also having audio issues. Oh, there's not a cat in the way, so I don't know what the issues are. I'm so sorry. Oh, you also having issues. Oh. Okay, everyone else, Okay. How, okay. Everyone, okay. I apologize for those who are having audio issues right now. But yes, let's power through because I want to make sure that we had time for larger questions at the end. Yes, so having them posted in the commons, if you're on that first floor a lot and you see kind of like those pillars where there's like a bajillion flyers posted, you can have your poster posted there. What you do is that you go to the information desk in the commons, and there's where you hand them the flyers to post. However, they do have requirements. It has to be at least 2 weeks before the event is going to take place, and you have to have the UMBC logo on it, and you have to indicate if your department doesn't have a logo, at least indicate like who is hosting the event. Those are kind of the rules. Mercedes has a tip for people potentially experiencing audio issues in the chat for those of you who can't see it. But yeah, on a flyer, please always include who's hosting it, the name of the person who's speaking, where they're from, because a lot of times people will post that Dr. So and so is coming, but they don't indicate where Dr. So and so is coming from. Put a date and a time. If you want to have some sort of image or photo that's compelling, do that. If not, that's also fine. An accessibility statement. UMBC does have a very standard accessibility statement. I encourage everyone to put one on there so that way people know how to reach out to you if they do have needs that you can assist them with. I think those are kind of the main things that I put on the flyer. If you have stuff that can be scanned on a QR code, put a QR code on there. That's kind of the way around the things being too wordy thing. So if you have a bunch of information that you want to convey but can't fit on the flyer, maybe link them to a website that will then give them all the information that you want to tell them. Any questions about flyers? Oh, I forgot other places you can put them. You could put them at the bus stops. You can put them in the breezeway when you're walking to the first floor of the commons. There's that kind of tunnel area. You can put signs there. There are many places you can put signs. Yes, we're still here, Maria. Is anyone else having? Yeah. It could be on my end that we're having. Can everyone hear me? Okay. All right. Yeah, so again, I'll put all this in the links, all the many different places that you can put up flyers. But does anyone have questions about flyers? Nope. Okay. Other methods of sharing. Choosing the right social media platform. A lot of people, I think about social media too much in a work capacity, so I can go into it later during the Q&A. I'm just trying to speed through for time, but there's a right and a wrong social media to use for certain events and ways in which to use specific social media. Email marketing, if you have a newsletter or if you have a mailing list, email marketing. My UMBC, this actually relates to Julie's question earlier. I'm going to show you the Gesture Center website to kind of give you an example of what we do. Okay, so when making an event, I put it into my UMBC, and there's a way on the back end of your website that you can pull information from my UMBC onto your website. And so that's exactly what I do. So everything that is here, if you recognize like location, date, time, like that is the exact format that is on my UMBC. It even has the tags and everything down here and RSVP in my UMBC. But when I'm linking to the events on social media and things like that, I link people to our website. One, it's a good way to drive traffic to your website. But also, as you said, Julie, my UMBC, you need a login. If you're having an event, however, that you would like people to register in advance and you don't want to use my UMBC, then that's when you would use things like Eventbrite or things like that. So I would encourage Eventbrite or other platforms if you have an event that requires registration. But a lot of our events for people off campus don't require registration. So I just direct people to our website. One thing that I want to point out, let me see. Okay. So this was an online event that we had in the fall. When you're entering something into my UMBC, they have that little line where it says enter. You can enter your virtual link there. For the purpose of like website accessibility, I also include the link in the text of the talk, so that way people can directly find the link to the talk itself. Because sometimes it's not obvious that, like, because up here, if I click, it's going to take me to my UMBC, join a meeting, versus this link, which will take me directly to the WebEx. So I always put the link for the talk in the text itself, in addition to including it, including it at the top there. I can get into conversation about image descriptions. Again, we could discuss that in Q&A. That's also for accessibility purposes. We also have a university communications and marketing team if you want far-reaching strategies. So if you want something advertised on the radio or newspaper advertisements, we do that for some of our Humanities Forum events. Like the DeVere Baldwin, we're going to push that a lot on YPR and also newspaper advertisements. But I'm also going to reach out personally to some friends I have who work for newspapers to help with promoting the event. And partnering with other departments. Partnering with other departments is a good way to get other faculty involved or students from different departments. So we had our for our DeVarian Baldwin talk, American Studies was the department that approached us about him. So obviously they are a sponsor. But I also reached out to sociology, anthropology, and public health for them to also help to promote the event. Like I said, having student disability services also leverages them. I've tried to reach out to the athletics department to have them co-sponsor an event. It was a talk about Blackness in basketball. So sometimes just partnering with other departments can also be a way to market your event, because that way it puts your event in the eyes of other people who otherwise might not know what's going on in your organization. Any questions about other methods? Nope. Okay. These are just some suggestions that I have for the day of the event. Please prepare opening remarks, acknowledge any co-sponsors, special guests, interpreters, and other service providers. UMBC does have a land acknowledgement statement. If you feel comfortable saying it, please do so. We've actually slightly amended the acknowledgement statement that we say. We say what they have on UMBC, but we also added a part where we say that we acknowledge that this statement is not enough and that other things need to be done towards fully repairing the damage. And part of the thing that we're doing at the Humanities Center is that, like I said, for each year we have a disability studies scholar. I'm trying to make it so that each year we have someone who's Indigenous as a speaker, because that way I'm putting money directly into the pockets of someone who is Indigenous, because that's the best way that I know how to help someone if the university on a larger level hasn't figured it out yet. Please provide any presentation materials to technical support in advance. Make sure that they are accessible. If there are handout materials available, make sure that they are accessible. And the National Center on Disability and Access to Education actually provides tools on how to make these files accessible. One thing that I really enjoyed was we had a speaker once who did a PowerPoint presentation, and he put a QR code on the very first page that provided a link directly to his PowerPoint as well as to the text of his talk. So that way, if there was someone who maybe couldn't see as well, they actually had it directly on their device or whatever they needed to read it directly. So some of this will require you preparing your speaker in advance. You might get pushback on it. I've encountered pushback on it many times, but I stand my ground and make it very firm that this is how we run things. And if you want to participate, then this is what you're going to do. The number one pushback I get is on microphones. People don't want to use microphones. I'm so sorry if you think that you can project, but you need to use a microphone. There's someone who might be hard of hearing. So that's my 2 cents on that. Again, I will provide all of these links, but these are some resources that are available through UMBC. There's even an event planning checklist that I derived a lot of this from, but a lot of people don't know that it exists, so I will share that with you. Some other resources that I found, like how to promote your event on social media. It kind of goes into the which social media to use and why, how to make your event more accessible. I also talk about color psychology again. Please learn about color psychology. I also use a color palette generator if I want to pick out colors that I'm going to use. I have a generator that I use to pick out the color scheme. And I also have a link to the accessibility cheat sheets. Any questions after everything that I have shared with you all? And let's stop sharing the screen so I can see you all. I hope that I've covered mostly everything. If you have more specific questions, because I know there was a question about paying people, and particularly paying people who might be undocumented or for whatever reason cannot provide you with a social security number. That is tricky. There are ways around it. There are not perfect ways around it. What I have done in the past is, let's say that this person is working with a faculty member, or they're presenting with someone else who can provide you with that documentation. Sometimes I will pay that person who is documented double. I will basically pay them the other person's fee and just say, can you give them their money afterwards? But this is like, these people are friends, so I can trust that they will do that. You don't always have that person available. Sometimes I need to pay, let's say if that person is affiliated with a nonprofit or some other organization, I will pay the nonprofit and say, okay, can you give them their, their money after the fact? Again, that is not a perfect system. I wish that there were a better way, but that is how I have found a way around it. One other unique way that I just learned, Aparna Nair, who we had speak, she lives in Canada. However, she is not a citizen. She used to live in the US, but and she had just moved to Canada. So a lot of her paperwork was still in flux and wasn't permanent yet. So she was on a specific type of visa where if she receives payment for anything for her work, it can mess with her visa. So she actually cannot accept payment for any talks. And she talked about how that can sometimes make her feel like a second-class scholar as a result of that. So what I did was I asked her, are there any books or supplies that you need for your research that we can pay for and ship to you? And there were some like rare books that were like $200 or something like that, and I paid for them. I had them shipped to Drescher Center, and then I mailed them to her house. And that was her way of accepting payment from us. So that was a unique way in which we did that. Again, it's one of those situations where you kind of have to play it by ear, depending on the circumstance, but do not let someone's status be a hindrance to you paying them, because everyone deserves to be paid for their work. Does anyone have questions about that, or have anyone encountered that issue of paying people who are a little tricky and a little bit more tricky in paying? No. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns? I've thrown a lot at you today, and it's a lot of work planning events, but I hope that this has helped, and has demystified the process a little bit. And yeah, people have asked me individually help, and so I finally decided to do a workshop so more people can learn. Thank you, Carrie. Carrie put in the chat that she also has experience with that as well. So if anyone needs help, she's also a resource. No other questions? Nope. Was this good for everyone? This is my first time kind of, okay, great. I was nervous that I wasn't able to cover everything because
This is Jessica. This was very helpful. Thank you so much. I'm hoping I can follow up with you separately with particular questions, but thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Yeah, if you have very specific questions that are specific to your situation, because again, sometimes weird situations pop up, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help or to think with you towards a solution. Because you don't know unless you ask, and I'm willing to help if some other people are a bit, closed off in certain offices that aren't as helpful, despite having a help ticket system. They're not very helpful. I will try my best to help. Okay. Yes. So I will. Yeah, I will follow up hopefully next week because I have a bit more information that I want to share with you all that came up in the course of our workshop. Yeah, and I hope that you all have a good rest of your Friday, despite the rain, and I hope you have a good weekend. Mercedes, yes.
LOL, sorry, I was gonna cheers you,
Oh,
not the
sorry.
second act. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that you all have a good rest of your weekend, and I hope that you all have success with any events that you're planning in the future. yeah, so have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Courtney.
Bye.